Greetings all, D&Disability here. Upon request from a Facebook group member, I am doing a video on role-playing monsters. This in some ways is a follow-up video to my Myths and Monsters video. And here I really want to talk about three simple concepts. We have three different kinds of monsters. Those that can speak, those that don't speak, and those that won't speak. Those that can speak are your typical social encounter monsters. Hags, even orcs, intelligent humanoids, and sometimes non-humanoid intelligent creatures as well. Those that don't speak are typically intelligent beings that choose not to speak or who don't speak very well. An example of this would be most dragons or, say, lizard folk or bullywugs. And then we have those that can't speak, such as the belay, or a T-Rex, or another kind of non-sentient monster, typically, that the party would be running up against. And we roleplay each of these in one of two ways. You can either act out the way they behave, or you can summarize the way they behave. To long-term DMs, this concept should not be anything new. But your choice in role-playing monsters does affect how the party views them, and I use both of these really interchangeably depending on my mood. So, by acting out, I mean that you can literally speak the words for the monster, for the NPC, of course, and a big thing that I do, especially with monsters that don't speak or don't speak very often, is I add and I swap vowel sounds, right? O's might become A's, or I swap all vowel sounds for A's, as an example. And so a sentence might read, instead of saying, there's an orc over there, it might be, there's an arc over there, right? You drop the other A. And they become kind of confused, disoriented by this, and we have to be careful as DMs, especially when dealing with the disabled, not to rely heavily on accents and being able to say it very clearly. There, an arc over air, and let them sit and parse it out. Right? Sometimes when we get caught up in doing the voice, doing the accent, we leave our players in the dust, not understanding anything. And sometimes for monsters, that's kind of what we want, right? We want it to be a verbal puzzle. But also be willing to write it out, spell it out for them. Now, it's easy to just summarize that same encounter and say, after a minute or two of going back and forth, you figure out that the orc or whatever says that the monster's over there, and that's where you're trying to go. It's far less exciting, but it is kind of far more accessible for the party in a way. So I would say, depending on your players, and particularly depending on your age group, certain necessities at the table might dictate what you want to do. Particularly if you're working with children, the voice can be quite fun. Otherwise, when physically role-playing monsters, the actual acting side of it, remember motion is key. Lean in, lock eyes with them, snake your head or body around, use your hands, use your gestures. All of that body language is what we call nonverbal rhetoric, physical rhetoric. And the rhetoric of the body matters a lot, particularly to those who miss out on audio cues, particularly if you are trying to do an accent that they aren't familiar with, or if they're too caught up in trying to figure out what you're saying. They can more often read what you're saying from the tone that you use and from the body language. Or I have one final point to make about monsters here, which is that when you're role-playing them, role-play their motivation. Whether this means you create a handy D12 chart or whatever with monster motivation, whether it's finding food, fleeing an enemy, looking for treasure, right, scouting, whatever it is, right? Base your social encounters upon that motivation. And in older versions of D&D, there were reaction rolls, which helped a lot. Maybe the monster's in a good mood. Maybe the monster's in a bad mood, right? And that kind of minutia is not what I'm looking to get into here, but it should be considered when you are role-playing them and whether you are giving voice to the monster or whether or not you are just summarizing its actions so the party can kind of quickly move on. Alright, y'all, so when crafting your social encounters with monsters, remember the 3 categories here, right? Those that do speak, those that don't speak, and those that won't speak, right? And, of course, remember that we think of monsters in terms of motivation. Alright, y'all, take it easy. I'll see you next week with my next video. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.